If I told you that you could manifest your dream life this week, would you believe me? Or would your mind race to list all the reasons it couldn't be so? If you could hold in your mind the image of your dream life and feel it so vividly that every detail became more real than the very chair you sit upon, do you realize what would happen? You would begin to live in a reality that bends itself to the shape of your assumption. This is not fantasy. This is not wishful thinking. This is law. How to manifest your dream life is not a matter of waiting years, climbing ladders, or pleading with fate. It is the art of assuming the end now. You must step into the reality of your fulfilled desire this very moment, letting its joy, its richness, its certainty saturate you. When you truly see yourself living it, the outer world has no choice but to catch up. Manifest your dream life this week by refusing to acknowledge the old reality as final. The law of assumption tells us that your present circumstances are nothing but the shadow of an old belief. And the moment you change that belief, you set in motion an entirely new script. You create your dream life not by chasing it, but by dwelling in it mentally, completely, and without compromise. How to manifest quickly is to become what you seek now, not later. When you live in the end, your dream life begins to live in you. The art of living in the end to create your dream life instantly is not a technique to be tried once and then set aside. It is a conscious way of moving through life, a deliberate choice to identify yourself with the state of your fulfilled desire, regardless of what your senses report. To live in the end is to abandon the posture of longing and step fully into the position of possession. It is the difference between hoping for something to happen and knowing it has already happened. The mind that hopes continues to affirm the absence of its desire. The mind that knows dwells in the assurance of its completion, and that assurance shapes the outer world to match it. You begin by identifying precisely what your dream life looks and feels like. Not in vague terms, but with the clarity of someone describing the room they are currently sitting in. If your dream life includes financial abundance, imagine what that means specifically for you: the accounts full, the freedom to choose without the pressure of lack, the comfort of security, and the thrill of opportunity. If it involves a certain relationship, feel the warmth of that connection, hear the laughter, see the small details that only occur in intimate familiarity. Whatever it is, the key is to make the inner scene so vivid that your mind accepts it as a present fact rather than a distant hope. Living in the end requires you to turn away from the temptation of the senses. The eyes may tell you that your current life is far from the vision you hold, but the senses are merely the servants of your mind, and they obey the state you most persistently occupy. If you dwell in the state of lack, your senses will confirm lack. If you dwell in the state of fulfillment, your senses will gradually align to show fulfillment. The outer follows the inner, not the other way around. This process is not about effort in the traditional sense. It is not about straining or forcing outcomes. It is about relaxation into certainty. You cultivate a quiet conviction that what you have accepted in your imagination is already yours. You are not looking to the outside for confirmation before you believe. You are believing before you see, and in doing so, you ensure that seeing must follow. This is why living in the end works so swiftly when applied with purity. There is no wavering between states, no entertaining the possibility of failure, no oscillating between belief and doubt. The mind that lives in the end does not ask, "When will this happen?" It rests in the assurance that it has already happened. Time is only a tool in the physical world. In the realm of imagination, the end is already complete. By accepting that completion now, you bypass the delays that doubt and divided attention create. This is how manifestation can move from being a long, drawn-out process to something that occurs with startling speed. An important part of this practice is emotional alignment. It is not enough to see the vision. You must feel the feelings of the fulfilled state. What does it feel like to have the thing you have long desired? Relief, gratitude, joy, confidence. Allow those emotions to rise within you and stay with them until they feel natural, as though you have always lived this way. The subconscious mind is impressed by feeling more than by words or images alone. When your inner world is saturated with the emotion of the wish fulfilled, the impression sinks deeply into the subconscious, where it begins to shape the physical world to match it. Discipline is the foundation of this art. For 7 days, or however long it takes, you must refuse to give your attention to the absence of your desire. This does not mean denying the facts of the present moment, but it does mean refusing to grant them authority over your inner state. You acknowledge the outer as a temporary shadow of past assumptions, but you give your loyalty only to the inner reality you have chosen. When you catch yourself drifting into the old state of lack or doubt, you gently but firmly return to the vision of your fulfilled desire, reinstating the feeling that it is already done. Over time, the state you inhabit within becomes second nature. It feels so real, so normal, that the outer world has no choice but to reflect it back to you. What once seemed like imagination now appears as solid fact. Opportunities, encounters, and events begin to arrange themselves in ways you could never have orchestrated consciously. You look back and realize that the shift was not in the world, but in you. And because you shifted, the world had to follow. This is the essence of living in the end. It is the understanding that creation is finished, that all states already exist, and that by occupying the one you desire, you call it forth into your experience. It is not a matter of creating something out of nothing, but of selecting from the infinite possibilities already present in the unseen. When you live as though it is already done, you align yourself with that version of reality, and your life begins to rearrange itself accordingly. How to manifest your dream life this week through unwavering mental discipline begins with understanding that the mind is both the seed and the soil of every experience you live. What you plant and nourish within it inevitably appears in the outer world. This is not a poetic metaphor, but a precise law of being. Your mental state is the mold into which life pours its substance, and the mold is determined entirely by what you choose to entertain persistently in thought and feeling. The discipline required is not one of physical strain, but of inner constancy, holding firm to the vision you have chosen, no matter what distractions or contradictions appear before your eyes. The reason most people fail to manifest quickly is not because the process is slow by nature, but because their minds wander from the desired state back into the old state of lack. They may spend a few minutes imagining the life they want, feeling its joy, but then they slip into worry, doubt, or the acceptance of appearances. Every time this happens, the mental image weakens, as if they were planting a seed and then digging it up to check if it had sprouted. True mental discipline means you plant the seed once, tend it with confidence, and never disturb it by questioning whether it is growing. To manifest your dream life in a matter of days, you must learn to govern the inner conversations you have with yourself. These silent dialogues shape your reality more than any external action you take. If you speak to yourself from the standpoint of someone still waiting, hoping, or struggling, you reaffirm the absence of your desire. If instead your inner speech flows from the certainty that you are already living in your desired reality, you solidify that state until it becomes the only one the subconscious mind recognizes. This is why constant awareness is necessary. Even in idle moments, your mind must be anchored in the world you have chosen, not in the one you wish to leave behind. Mental discipline also demands that you select and control the images you entertain throughout the day. The mind is like a screen, constantly projecting pictures drawn from your thoughts and beliefs. Most people allow these images to appear randomly, shaped by the news they consume, the complaints they hear, and the fears they indulge. But to manifest rapidly, you must choose your images as carefully as a painter chooses colors. You must see yourself already in possession of the dream life, moving through it naturally, feeling its reality so strongly that it eclipses every competing picture. When an image of lack or failure appears, you do not wrestle with it or feed it with attention. You calmly replace it with the image of your fulfilled desire. This kind of discipline is not about a force, but about persistence. You do not need to imagine every detail for hours on end. A few minutes of concentrated feeling, repeated with consistency, is far more powerful than scattered hours of daydreaming, diluted by doubt. The key is that during those moments of imagination, you are fully present in the end state, so completely absorbed that the outer world fades from awareness. Then, as you move through your day, you carry the feeling with you like an unshakable secret, allowing no circumstance to persuade you otherwise. The outer world will often present evidence that seems to contradict your desire. This is the moment where discipline is tested. It is easy to believe when everything appears to be going your way. The real mastery is to hold your inner conviction when nothing yet shows in the physical. In these moments, remind yourself that the outer is only the delayed reflection of the inner, and that it must eventually conform to the state you persist in occupying. By refusing to react to appearances, you keep your energy and focus centered on the unseen reality, which is the true cause of all things. Even your physical actions must be informed by this discipline. You act as the person who already has the life you want, not as someone trying to get it. You make choices from the position of fulfillment, not from desperation or lack. This alignment between your thoughts, feelings, and actions strengthens the impression on the subconscious, accelerating the movement of your desire into form. In the span of a single week, if you commit to unwavering mental discipline, you will notice a shift. It may begin subtly, an idea, a conversation, an unexpected opportunity, but these are the signs of alignment. They are the first fruits of your persistence, indicators that the unseen has begun to solidify into the seen. And the more you maintain your inner state without faltering, the faster and more dramatically the outer must respond. Using the law of assumption to rewrite your reality begins with recognizing that what you are living right now is nothing more than the crystallized form of assumptions you have previously held. These assumptions may not have been consciously chosen, but they have nonetheless shaped the conditions, people, and circumstances you now encounter. The law is simple: you do not get what you merely want, you get what you assume to be true. An assumption is not a fleeting thought or wish. It is the deep-seated conviction that something is so, whether or not the senses agree. To rewrite your reality, you must change the assumptions that govern it, for the outer world has no choice but to reflect them. An assumption is a belief in motion. It is the quiet acceptance that something is already settled. When you hold an assumption, your mind no longer asks, "Will this happen?" Instead, it operates from the position that it has already happened. This shift is subtle but powerful, for it alters your perception, your emotional tone, and even the opportunities you notice. The law of assumption teaches that reality conforms to the mental image and feeling you persist in, not to the conditions you wish were different. To change the scene before you, you do not fight the existing picture. You replace it with a new one and live as though it were already the current fact. Rewriting your reality requires that you first take full ownership of your inner world. You must become aware of the assumptions you presently carry. Listen to the way you speak about your life to yourself and others. Notice the thoughts that surface when you think about your future. These reveal the assumptions that are silently ruling you. If, for example, you assume that success is rare and that opportunities are scarce, you will live in a world that mirrors that belief. If you assume that love is fleeting or that money is hard to come by, your experience will validate that conviction again and again. The law is impartial. It does not bring you what is good or bad, only what you have assumed to be real. Once you have identified an assumption you wish to change, the work is to construct a new one and inhabit it fully. This is not about repeating empty phrases or hoping the mind will be convinced through words alone. It is about immersing yourself in the feeling of the new state so completely that it becomes your natural standpoint. If your current assumption is that wealth is beyond your reach, you replace it with the assumption that you are already financially abundant. You imagine scenes that imply this abundance, such as paying for something without hesitation, seeing your bank account filled, or hearing a friend congratulate you on a recent success. The key is that these scenes are not imagined as future possibilities. They are accepted as present realities. The law of assumption works because the subconscious mind responds to what you accept as true, not to what you hope will happen someday. By persistently dwelling in the new assumption, you impress it upon the subconscious, and once impressed, it begins to shape your outer reality to match. This is not an instant switch in the physical world, but it is an instant switch in your inner world, and that inner switch is the true cause. As you live in your new assumption, the outer world will begin to rearrange itself in ways you could not have predicted. The people you meet, the conversations you have, the opportunities that arise, all will start to align with the state you have chosen. This is not coincidence. The law of assumption ensures that what you are within must eventually be without. Just as a shadow takes the form of the object casting it, your circumstances take the form of the assumptions you project. It is important to persist, especially when appearances seem unchanged. The most common mistake is to abandon the new assumption because the senses have not yet confirmed it. But the law operates in the unseen first. The outer is always a delayed reflection of the inner. If you persist in the assumption without wavering, the reflection must change. This persistence is the difference between those who see small, sporadic results and those who transform their lives entirely. In practice, rewriting your reality through the law of assumption is a constant yet gentle commitment. It is not about forcing the mind, but about guiding it back again and again to the chosen state. When doubts arise, you do not argue with them. You simply replace them with the image and feeling of your fulfilled desire. Over time, this becomes your natural mental home. And from this home, all the rooms of your life are furnished anew. Replacing old beliefs with the conviction of your fulfilled desire is the very heart of transformation. Every condition you experience is built upon a foundation of beliefs. Some you consciously adopted, many you absorbed without question. These beliefs act like the unseen architecture of your life, silently dictating what you think is possible, what you expect to happen, and what you are willing to receive. If you wish to manifest your dream life, the old structure must be dismantled and rebuilt with convictions that align with the life you choose to live. This process is not about temporarily entertaining new ideas, but about establishing them so deeply within you that they become unshakable truth. Beliefs are simply repeated assumptions that have hardened into fact in your mind. They are not inherently true in the absolute sense. They are only true for you because you have accepted them as such. This means they can be replaced. Yet the mind often clings to familiar beliefs, even those that limit and harm, because they feel safe through repetition. To replace these old beliefs, you must first be willing to question them. Ask yourself whether they serve you, whether they align with the life you desire, and whether they are rooted in past experiences that no longer define who you are becoming. Once you identify an old belief you wish to release, the work begins by introducing its opposite in the form of a new conviction. For example, if you have long believed that success is reserved for others, your new conviction must be that you are inherently successful, that opportunities flow naturally to you, and that your life unfolds with ease and abundance. But this conviction cannot remain a mere idea in your head. It must be felt in your body, absorbed into your emotions, and carried with the quiet certainty of something already real. Conviction is more than hope. It is the mental and emotional stance of someone who has already received what they desired. It speaks through your thoughts, it radiates through your presence, and it informs your every choice. To build conviction, you must saturate yourself in the feeling of your fulfilled desire until it becomes second nature. This is achieved by imagining scenes that imply your desire has already been realized, and by revisiting these scenes often enough that they replace the old memories and narratives that once occupied your mind. This replacement process is not instantaneous for most, because the old beliefs have been reinforced through years of repetition. But with each return to the feeling of the fulfilled state, the new conviction grows stronger. Eventually, it becomes so dominant that the old belief can no longer survive in your mental world. This is when outer changes begin to accelerate. Life mirrors your conviction, not your wishes. The more deeply you live from the certainty of your fulfilled desire, the more rapidly reality rearranges to match it. There will be moments when the old belief tries to resurface. You may see something in the outer world that tempts you to slip back into your former state of doubt. In those moments, the discipline is to remain unmoved. Recognize the appearance as nothing more than the fading echo of your previous assumptions and refuse to give it power. Instead, return immediately to the inner feeling of your new conviction. By doing so, you weaken the hold of the old belief and strengthen the presence of the new. Replacing old beliefs also means adjusting the way you respond to life. If you have assumed the conviction of your fulfilled desire, you will naturally respond differently to events. Instead of reacting with fear or lack, you respond with calm assurance, because your inner state no longer depends on temporary appearances. This steadiness is a signal to the subconscious that the new belief is the only reality you accept, and it continues to shape the outer world accordingly. In time, the conviction becomes so natural that you no longer have to remind yourself of it consciously. It becomes the lens through which you see everything, and because you see through it, you live through it. This is the point where manifestation becomes effortless. Not because the world has suddenly changed in your favor, but because your beliefs have shifted to align with the reality you always wanted to experience. The old structure has been dismantled, and in its place stands a new foundation that supports the life you have chosen. Persisting in your inner vision until it becomes fact is the discipline that transforms a fleeting desire into a living reality. It is easy to imagine a dream once or twice, to entertain it when you feel inspired, or to play with the idea of a better life when you are in a quiet, hopeful mood. But true manifestation demands a persistence that outlasts moods, circumstances, and the inevitable fluctuations of daily life. Persistence means holding your vision with the same clarity and emotional conviction on the days when everything appears to be working against you, as you do when everything seems to be falling into place. It is the steady flame that burns whether the winds of doubt blow softly or fiercely. When you hold a vision, you are building an inner world that must eventually project itself outward. The challenge for most is that they confuse the delay in the outer reflection with failure. They imagine a few scenes, feel uplifted for a moment, then look outside for immediate evidence. When it does not appear right away, they slip back into the old state, thinking the vision is not working. In truth, the vision begins to work the moment you hold it with sincerity. But like a seed planted in the soil, it takes time to break through into visibility. The unseen processes are already in motion long before the first signs appear in the physical. Persistence is the refusal to let the outer world dictate your inner state. It is the decision to live from the end, even when your senses scream that nothing has changed. This is not a stubborn denial of facts, but a higher loyalty to the truth you have chosen to believe. You know the current circumstances are the result of past assumptions, and you refuse to let them rewrite the new story you are telling within. Every time you return to the inner vision, you are reinforcing the impression upon the subconscious mind, and it is this impression that eventually solidifies into form. This inner vision must be more than a casual picture. It must be felt as real, inhabited in imagination with the same familiarity you have with your current life. You must visit it often, not as a distant dream, but as your home. When doubts arise, and they will, you do not indulge them or give them the authority of truth. You gently but firmly bring your focus back to the scene of fulfillment, to the sensations and emotions of already living the life you desire. Over time, this repeated return wears down the old patterns and strengthens the new until the inner vision becomes your most natural state. Many abandon their vision too soon because they expect a straight line from desire to fulfillment. But persistence requires patience with the invisible. Life has its own perfect timing, and that timing is shaped by your ability to maintain the state long enough for it to reproduce itself in the outer world. If you break your focus at the first sign of delay, you are like a gardener who rips up the seed every morning to check for growth. Instead, persistence trusts the process, knowing that the moment the vision took root in imagination, the outcome became inevitable. The outer world will test you, not to punish you, but to give you the chance to prove the strength of your persistence. You may encounter situations that seem to contradict your desire, people who doubt your ability, or events that tempt you to question your progress. In these moments, persistence becomes both shield and compass. You remind yourself that the only reality you acknowledge is the one you have chosen within, and you continue to live as though it were already present. Each time you do, you demonstrate your faith in the unseen, and that faith draws the unseen into the seen. Over time, persisting in your inner vision transforms not just your outer life, but your inner self. You begin to trust your creative power more deeply. You recognize the patterns of doubt and fear as illusions, and they lose their hold over you. The vision that once required conscious effort to recall now lives in you effortlessly. And then, almost without realizing it, you find yourself living in the very circumstances you once only imagined. The shift feels natural because you have been there in your mind for so long. When it appears outwardly, it feels like the most ordinary thing in the world. Trusting the unseen process and releasing all concern for the how is one of the most liberating yet challenging aspects of manifesting your dream life. The human mind is trained to seek explanations, to map out every step from where you are to where you wish to be. But the creative process that governs manifestation does not operate according to the limited logic of the senses. The how is the domain of the unseen, an intelligence far greater than the conscious mind, an order that arranges people, events, and circumstances in ways that often defy prediction. Your role is not to manipulate the outer world into shape, but to hold the inner state so firmly that the outer has no choice but to conform. When you decide on a desire and live as though it is already fulfilled, you set into motion forces and connections beyond your awareness. Opportunities arise that you could not have planned, encounters happen that you could not have orchestrated. The mind, however, often grows restless in the gap between the desire and its appearance, attempting to figure out the precise chain of events that will lead to the outcome. This restlessness is a form of doubt, and doubt is simply faith in the wrong direction. The moment you begin to ask, how will it come? You have stepped out of the end and back into the state of not having. Trusting the unseen is an act of surrender, but not of passivity. It is not about sitting idle, waiting for life to happen. It is about acting in alignment with the reality you have chosen, without worrying about the mechanisms that bring it to pass. You live from the certainty of the fulfilled state and allow life to organize itself around that certainty. This surrender is not weakness, it is strength, for it acknowledges that the unseen process is wiser, faster, and more exact than anything the conscious mind could devise. Releasing the how also frees you from the strain of forcing outcomes. When you believe you must personally control every detail, you carry the weight of the entire creation on your shoulders. This tension often pushes the desired result further away, for it affirms that it is not yet yours. But when you release the how, you move lightly. You act naturally, guided by intuitive impulses that feel effortless, and these impulses often lead you straight into the path of your desire. This is the quiet cooperation between your inner state and the outer flow, a harmony that cannot be forced, but can only be allowed. The unseen process works in ways that often seem indirect. What appears to be a setback may in fact be the very thing that clears the path for your fulfillment. What looks like a coincidence may be the exact alignment that makes your desire possible. The mind, if left to its own analysis, may misinterpret these events, seeing them as random or even unfavorable. This is why trust is essential. Trust says, even if I do not see how this connects, I know it is working for my good. And in time, the pattern reveals itself with perfect clarity, and you see that every piece was necessary. Letting go of the how also allows for outcomes greater than you originally imagined. The mind can only create scenarios based on what it has known before, but the unseen has access to possibilities you have never considered. When you insist on controlling the process, you limit it to the scope of your own experience. When you release control, you open the door to solutions and expressions that surpass your expectations. Many find that when their desires manifest, they arrive in forms more beautiful, more complete, and more perfectly timed than anything they could have scripted. This trust must be active. It is maintained by returning again and again to the feeling of the fulfilled desire, no matter what stage of the process you appear to be in. When impatience creeps in, you do not wrestle with it. You replace it with the sensation of already having. You remind yourself that the unseen is never idle, that the moment you assume the end, the process began, and that its completion is certain. You walk through your days with the quiet confidence of someone who knows their outcome is assured, and in that confidence, you find peace long before the physical manifestation arrives. Over time, this way of trusting becomes natural. You no longer demand to know every step ahead. You move with faith that each step will be revealed when it is time. The tension of trying to control life dissolves, and in its place is a steady, calm awareness that you are supported by forces working tirelessly on your behalf. This is the ease and freedom that comes from trusting the unseen process and letting go of all concern for the how. The life you desire is not waiting somewhere in the distant future. It exists now, fully formed within the unseen. The moment you dare to occupy it in imagination, to feel its reality and claim it as your own, you set in motion an unfailing process. Through living in the end, maintaining unwavering discipline, shaping your assumptions, replacing limiting beliefs, persisting in your vision, and trusting the unseen path, you align yourself with the truth that creation is already finished. The outer world has no choice but to echo the inner state you have chosen. And when it does, You will realize that the journey was never about chasing a dream. It was about becoming the one who already lives it. When you embody that state, the manifestation is not a matter of if or when, it is a certainty, a fact waiting to be seen.